Welcome to Session 2 of our study on the Book of Proverbs. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Solomon, and we're going to read and discuss chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to cover a lot of ground fairly quickly. But first, let's open with a prayer. Oh God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your word. So grant that our minds may know your truth and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. At the beginning of chapter 1, we saw the first unit described as the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. This editorial heading follows the late biblical practice of ascribing text to famous figures from the national past. Solomon was the third and last king of the United Monarchy. In 1 Kings 3 through 15, Solomon is said to have been endowed by God with wisdom. In 1 Kings 4:32, it is said that Solomon is the author of 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. Most current scholars, however, tell us that it's unlikely Solomon wrote many, if any, of the proverbs found in this book. Robert Alter, for example, says that in fact the collection of sayings and longer poems found in this book were written in all probability centuries after Solomon, with the earliest stratum going back to the 8th century BCE, though some individual proverbs may have been older. Michael V. Fox says, historically it's improbable that many, if any, of the proverbs were written by Solomon. The social background implied by the sayings is quite varied. The proverbs do not usually bespeak the concerns of the royal court and never speak from the perspective of a monarch. Moreover, many of the teachings would not make sense as Solomon's tutelage of his son. Concerns such as the dangers of guaranteeing a loan for another, the threat of public disgrace, and the assumption of monogamy do not seem like the words of Solomon to Rehoboam. Could Solomon have written some of these proverbs? Yeah, maybe, but probably not many of them. Nevertheless, we begin with chapter 3. Chapter 3 combines the topics of wisdom, piety, and human relationships. It opens with 6 two-verse commands. 5 of the 6 are negative. We have a tribute to personified wisdom and praise to God. The final unit tells us that youth should keep good sense and discretion. We have commands on how to treat others, and we read of God's devotion to the upright versus God's disgust with the wicked. Let's read the first 12 verses of chapter 3. Again, the 2-verse commands that we see here. My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and abundant welfare they will give you. Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and of people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be a healing for your flesh and a refreshment for your body. Honor the Lord with your substance and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. My child, do not despise the Lord's discipline, or be wary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves the one he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. So, all but one of these pairings, again, we said was negative. It's a do not. Do not forget my teaching. Do not let loyalty forsake you. Do not rely on your own insight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Do not despise the Lord's discipline. Only verse 9 and 10 are positive. Honor the Lord with your substance and with the first fruits of your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. The theme here is to trust and honor God. The father urges the youth to keep these parental commandments. In verse 3, the youth may literally be expected to wear the instructions about his neck. tie a string around your neck, attach the instructions to that. Writing something on your heart assures its permanence. When you write it on your heart, that means it's going to be there. It's got it deep in your heart. Turning away from wickedness or evil in verses 7 and 8 is a hallmark of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. In verses 9 and 10, the youth should put his money where his faith is, offering his first and best to God. He is assured of great return. Divine discipline is an act of love. So verses 13 through 18 offer a tribute to wisdom. The word happy is used here at the very beginning and the very end of this passage. It frames this tribute to wisdom. The section opens with seek and find motive. You seek in order to find. The youth must first take the initiative. He has to seek after it, and then he'll find it. Here again, we're describing wisdom as a woman. So verses 13 through 18. Happy are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding. For her income is better than silver, and her revenue is better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of the pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called happy. So we can compare these lines to what the youth might look for in a bride, for example. Nothing you desire compares to her. We see the benefits: right hand, long life; left hand, riches and honor. The tree of life listed in verse 18 is from a mythological image in the ancient Near East. In the Old Testament, the tree of life is only found in Genesis 2, verse 9. It's the Garden of Eden, where you remember the tree of life is off limits. Let's go on with verses 19 and 20. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the deeps broke open, and the clouds dropped down the dew. Here, the Father shifts the object of praise from personified wisdom to God. The Lord, by wisdom, founded the earth. Wisdom becomes an instrument or an agent. Ancients believed that the earth was a flat, solid mass that God set atop the pillars of the earth. God similarly spread out or fixed the heavens as a dome on the pillars of heaven. God also controls the waters from above and below. Wisdom is cosmically significant, authoritative, even elemental. The final section of chapter 3, verses 21 through 35, provides an interweaving of divine and human relationships. First, the Father urges the Son to hold on to good sense and discretion, because they afford security, so the youth will not know the calamities that overcome the wicked. So we read 21 through 26. My child, do not let these escape from your sight. Keep sound wisdom and prudence, and they will be life for your soul, an adornment for your neck. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you sit down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Then you will not be afraid of sudden panic or the storm that strikes the wicked. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. Now we have a series of negative commands concerning how the youth should treat other people. 27 through 35. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come again, tomorrow I will give it, when you have it with you. Do not plan harm against your neighbor, who lives trustingly beside you. Do not quarrel with anyone without cause, when no harm has been done to you. Do not envy the violent, and do not choose any of their ways. For the perverse are an abomination to the Lord, but the upright are in his confidence. The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the abode of the righteous. Toward the scorners he is scornful, but to the humble he shows favor. The wise will inherit honor, but the stubborn fools disgrace. So the neighbor in verse 28 and 29 is anyone with whom the youth lives or interacts as a result of life circumstances. These commands address how to behave with everyone. Moral agency begins local, but it spreads worldwide. It's everyone. Scheming is nearly always reprehensible. Quarrels without cause cannot be justified. Envy leads to self-destructive behavior. The chapter closes with this contrast between the fates of the wicked and the upright. God loathes the wicked. God takes the upright into his confidence. The parent in this chapter insists on communal rituals or community rituals. Though through rituals we locate ourselves in the world, the prophets and the leaders of Israel sought to reform the community by means of rituals. Proverbs 3 defines moral units as communal, the moral values that are shared by all. The parent underlines human interconnectedness. The consequences of our deeds are borne by those around us. So let's go on to chapter 4. Chapter 4 opens with a tribute to personified wisdom, the lady that is Lady Wisdom, or the person or the entity we know as the source of wisdom. He starts with what his father taught him. We also notice that the father shifts from talking to his son to talking to his sons or to his children. This is not an uncommon shift in wisdom literature. We read chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. Listen, children, to a father's instruction, and be attentive that you may gain insight. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender and my mother's favorite, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever else you get insight. Prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a fair garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. When the father refers to and quotes his father, he signals that the authority of his teaching rests not primarily on his own life experience or position in the family, but on the generations before him. The father is passing on information, beliefs, and customs that the community has tested time and again. There is an Egyptian instruction, Tahotep, that explains this cycle. It goes well with a son when he is heard. When he is old, has reached veneration, he will speak likewise to his children, renewing the teaching of his father. Every man teaches as he acts. He will speak to the children so that they will speak to their children. There's the comfort of perspective here because others have weathered similar situations. Other people have gone through this. And they've come out okay because they followed the rules. In verses 10 through 19, the father talks about two possible paths. We notice here that the father is talking again to just one child, no longer children, but not necessarily a son, but a child. Hear, my child, and accept my words, that the years of your life may be many. I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. When you walk, your step will not be hampered. If you run, you will not stumble. Keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Do not go on it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they have done wrong. They are robbed of sleep unless they have made someone stumble. For they eat the bread of the wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what they stumble over. So we see the path of the wicked compared to the path of the righteous here. This passage is loaded with the language of movement. Walk, run, stumble, enter, avoid, go, turn away, and pass by. Chapter 4 ends with the portrait of the moral self that features 5 principal body parts: the ear, the eyes, the heart or mind, the mouth, and the feet. So listen for these when we read verses 20 through 27. My child, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the spring of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. So how do we think about tradition? The sages stand firmly on tradition. They rarely appeal to their own authority or personal experience. Time-tested understandings of the past are more valuable than fresh opinions of today. At the same time, here the parent portrays traditions as dynamic. He talks about the way of wisdom, the paths of righteousness. Tradition is not a static set of settled conclusions, but a trusty, worn map, a framework and language which enables the youth to traverse a terrain that is new to him. So now we go on to chapter 5. In chapter 5, the father turns again to the strange woman, or the loose woman, the wife of one's youth. He highlights the danger of the strange woman and the delights of the wife. The aim here seems to be to teach the importance of fidelity to one's spouse, community, and to wisdom. So chapter 5, the first 2 verses. My child, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, so that you may hold on to prudence, and your lips may guard knowledge. For the first time, the Father talks here about my wisdom and my understanding. We have just heard about tradition and the wisdom passed down through the generations, but keep in mind that the Father is talking about wisdom, which is an entity out there that belongs to no one in particular, except Lady Wisdom, to God. The Son should pay attention so that he too may speak wisely. His lips may guard knowledge. This is in contrast to the lips of the strange or loose woman that we introduced in verse 3 through 14. So let's go on with 3 through 14. For the lips of a loose woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps follow the path to Sheol. She does not keep straight the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. And now, my child, listen to me, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her, and do not go near to the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others, and your years to the merciless, and strangers take their fill of your wealth, and your labors go to the house of an alien. And at the end of your life you groan when your flesh and body are consumed, and you say, Oh, how I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers, or incline my ears to my instructors. Now I am at the point of utter ruin in the public assembly. There is more here to the imagery of honey and oil. Consumed alone, neither satisfies hunger and thirst and provides sufficient sustenance. These are liquids of delight and danger. Part of the Father's concern seems to be exogamy, or marriage to someone outside one's own group or community. So let's go on to read about a wellspring of joy, the wife of one's youth, verses 15 through 23. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourself alone, and not for sharing with strangers. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. May her breast satisfy you at all times. May you be intoxicated always by her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, by another woman, and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For human ways are under the eyes of the Lord, and he examines all their paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare them, and they are caught in the coils of their sin. They die for lack of discipline, and because of their great folly, they are lost. So we still have the imagery of liquid here, but instead of oil and honey, it is water, water from your own well. The father calls the wife a fountain in verse 18. In the final verses, we hear about how the sins of the wicked catch them in the coils of their own skin. He staggers not from intoxicating sexual pleasures, but utter foolishness. We go on with chapter 6. Chapter 6, there are two main units, each beginning with my son or my child, depending on your translation. The first unit, verses 1 through 19, concern behavior that threatens personal and community welfare, and portraits of the wicked, the good for nothing. The second main unit, 20 through 35, returns to the subject of sexual conduct to warn against committing adultery. So here we read the first 5 verses, which deal with money matters. My child, if you have given your pledge to your neighbor, if you have bound yourself to another, you are snared by the utterance of your lips, caught by the words of your mouth. So do this, my child, and save yourself. For you have come into your neighbor's power. Go, hurry, and plead with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. The father here is cautioning against providing a bond or guarantee to a neighbor for the debt of a stranger. If one becomes a guarantor, all of one's property was subject to seizure if the debtor failed to repay the loan. Calling such responsibility senseless and unsafe and something to avoid is what the father is doing here. When you agree with a handshake to guarantee a loan, you end up in your neighbor's hands. Verses 6 through 11, we hear the story of the ant and the sloth. 6 through 11. Go to the ant, you lazy bones. Consider its ways and be wise. Without having any chief or officer or ruler, it prepares its food in summer and gathers its sustenance in harvest. How long will you lie there, old lazy bones? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed warrior. Here the father teaches industriousness. The only place in the Old Testament where the ant is mentioned is in Proverbs. Here the ant is depicted as small, but exceedingly wise. We go on with verses 12 through 15. The good for nothing. A scoundrel and a villain goes around with crooked speech, winking the eyes, shuffling the feet, pointing the fingers, with perverted mind devising evil, continually sowing discord. On such a one calamity will descend suddenly, in a moment, damage beyond repair. Here the father notes speech, body, language, thoughts, effect on the community, and the fate of the good for nothing. None of it's good. We go on with verses 16 through 19. There's 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that hurry to run to evil, a lying witness who testifies falsely, and the one who sows discord in a family. So 6 things the Lord hates, an abomination. Don't be one of these. Don't be doing this stuff. The remainder of chapter 6 is a warning against adultery. We start again with keep your father's commandments and your mother's teaching. We see this same idea in Deuteronomy as part of Moses' instruction. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you're at home and when you're away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead. In verse 23, we see the description of parental instruction as a lamp and as a light. So we read verses 20 through 23. My child, keep your father's commandment and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Bind them on your heart always, tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will lead you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching a light, and the reproofs of discipline are the way of life. So parental instruction protects the youth from the strange woman who is depicted here as a married woman. We read verses 24 through the end of the chapter. To preserve you from the wife of another, from the smooth tongue of the adulteress. Do not desire her beauty in your heart. Do not let her capture you with her eyelashes. For the prostitute's fee is only a loaf of bread, but the wife of another stalks a man's precious life. Can fire be carried in the bosom without burning one's clothes? Or can one walk on hot coals without scorching the feet? So is he who sleeps with his neighbor's wife. No one who touches her will go unpunished. Thieves are not despised who steal only to satisfy their appetite when they are hungry. Yet if they are caught, they will pay sevenfold. They will forfeit all the goods of their house. But he who commits adultery has no sense. He who does it destroys himself. He will get wounds and dishonor, and his disgrace will not be wiped away. For jealousy arouses a husband's fury, and he will show no restraint when he takes revenge. He will accept no compensation, and will refuse a bribe, no matter how great. So this whole section is summarized in 32 through 35. The adulterer is said to be without sense and destroy himself. So let's read that one, last few verses once again. But he who commits adultery has no sense. He who does it destroys himself. He will get wounds and dishonor, and his disgrace will not be wiped away. For jealousy arouses a husband's fury, and he will show no restraint when he takes revenge. He will accept no compensation, and will refuse a bribe, no matter how great. So this finishes the second session. In session 3, we will complete the first unit of Proverbs when we discuss chapters 7, 8, and 9, and we will begin the second unit with chapters 10 and 11. Our discussion session is this coming Sunday, May 29th. Hope to see you then. Have a good week.